Hello and welcome to EHC-TV, and I am Chandler Foster, and this is your news interview. We've recently had a tragedy that impacted our area. It was kind of unexpected, but thank goodness the campus wasn't affected that much. We had some impact, but there were some things that needed to be repaired. And joining me on set now is Travis Proffitt. Thank you to talk about that. Thank you for joining me, Travis.
Yep, you're welcome, Chandler.
So, when we first got this severe weather, and I know it was unexpected, nobody really expected this. So, talk about what you saw, like on social media, and as you were following the weather and the hurricane.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, we knew a storm was coming, right? And probably a pretty big storm, but I think you're right. And even a lot of what you saw on the news and in social media is that even a lot of the meteorologists and climatologists said that this was literally and figuratively sort of a perfect storm, right? That created some really historic kind of conditions and historic damage to our region that I think a lot of people are saying now it was more in the lines of a 1,000-year event, a 1,000-year flood for our region, which I don't know that anybody ever really anticipates that scope of destruction, right?
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of damage, but fortunately there wasn't as much damage on Emory's campus as there was in other areas. So could you kind of talk about some of the impacts that the university did face?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we saw on campus was wind damage, right? There were several trees, very large trees, that came down around campus. And unfortunately, we did have a few students whose vehicles were under some of those trees. And we've been trying to do all that we can to help those students out, in particular, very recently, getting them connected with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to maybe help get them some financial assistance with their vehicle damages. But a lot of wind damage on our campus, but luckily not a lot of the flooding that some other areas nearby saw.
Well, now the damages that were done on campus, what did you have to do to help relieve those impacts?
Well, and that's where I will give a huge shout out to our facilities folks, right? Because in the height of the storm, when most everybody else was hunkered down, right? They were out assessing damage, starting to clean things up as it was safe to do so. And so, yeah, I would just give a huge accolade to our facilities and grounds crew, because they really, quite literally, put themselves in danger to help take care of campus and to clean up some of the damage.
Well, now, you were also involved in not only campus repairs, but community repairs as well, and community outreach. So talk about some of the things that you did to help the community.
Yeah, well, you know, even sort of when the storm was still actively sort of happening, there were already conversations underway at the college about what are ways that we need to be thinking about how we respond, because we're a neighbor, right? We're a part of this community. Sometimes people say Emory's a bit of a bubble, but we're not. We are a part of Washington County. We're a part of Southwest Virginia. And once we started to know that a lot of our neighbors were going to be really severely impacted, we wanted to know that we wanted to be a part of helping, just like we did back in 2011, when the tornado hit Glade Spring and caused a lot of damage. You know, Emory and Henry jumped right into action there to help our neighbors then.
I was actually going to ask you about that. You know, this situation now versus the situation in 2011. I wanted to see, you know, talk about the severity of the repairs and the damage, and what you thought about that tragedy versus this one today.
Sure. To be fair, I wasn't here in 2011. I knew that happened, but I wasn't physically here. I was actually living in North Carolina at the time. I would say one of the big differences that between the tornado and now Hurricane Helene is the damage in Glade Spring was profound, right? And people lost their lives, and really, really heavy impacts in a very localized sort of spot, right? It was a relatively small area that tornado created damage in, whereas, as we know from Hurricane Helene, I mean, it is multiple states, multiple counties, thousands of miles of roads and thousands of miles of river that have been altered and changed and damaged as a result of this. So I think just the scale and the scope of damage after Hurricane Helene is just so much broader. And I think that's really important, and it's part of the conversation that we're having at Emory right now is, you know, we have been and will continue to be really involved in sort of the immediate cleanup and helping people with those immediate needs that they have. But there's going to be recovery work for years after Hurricane Helene, and there are going to be economic impacts, educational impacts, environmental impacts that play out for years as a result of this storm. And so Emory and Henry wants to be involved in the long run, right? Not just in the cleanup, but in the recovery efforts as well.
Well, I know it is going to take some time to do the recovery efforts, and things are going to take time. It takes time to build these things back up. But as a campus community, what are some things that we can do now to contribute to the cleanup and the repairs?
Well, be checking your emails and be checking flyers around campus. I think the Bonner Scholars at this moment are doing another flood bucket drive, which is, you know, collecting supplies needed for people to clean their homes after the floods. Lots of opportunities to be involved, and so just to be checking campus social media, campus emails, and campus flyers. But then, and if anybody who sees this interview is interested, please reach out to me. One of the other things that we've done is we've actually created what we're calling a long-term efforts committee, and it's comprised of some faculty and staff and students who say, I know that the flood has happened and we're cleaning up after it right now, but I want to be involved in those long-term efforts. And so if folks want to be involved in that committee and to be a part of those meetings as we're starting to brainstorm and work with communities and community partners about what some of those long-term needs are going to be, that's an opportunity that folks will have as well.
I think that's a great plan. And Travis, thank you so much for joining us today. For EHC-TV, this has been Chandler Foster with your news interview, and I'll see you next time.